Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just am here to share a little bit about my life and about Islam and what that means to me. So, as the Imam said, I'm Dawoud, or Tom, and I've been a revert, a Muslim, for about 4.5 years. And I'm a teacher, a primary school teacher at Canberra Montessori. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to share a little bit with you about my life. So I was brought up in a very Christian household. So we're Catholics, charismatic Catholics. So if you've heard of the Pentecostal Christians, the ones that they wave their hands in the air and they're really into healing and all that sort of thing, that's what I kind of grew up with, but in the Catholic Church. My parents are still really very Catholic. But that was my upbringing, and I guess I got involved in the youth side of things and this group that we've been running because I was a part of a youth group when I was growing up, a Christian one, and I did a bit of that kind of work when I was a high school teacher. I did a youth ministry class for a while. So I grew up, knowing, with a faith and knowing about God, but I guess in a different way, or Allah, God, as I used to say then. As I was growing up, there was, I was really committed to my faith, and I love to learn about that. But there was always a kind of a hole. There's a hole in me, in a way. I always had this kind of faith crisis that was going on underneath that I didn't really like to show very much, but there was this kind of faith crisis going on. And I tried everything I could to get around that, to get past it. I studied, I prayed more, I spoke to the priests and the other sort of learned people around. And I just tried harder. I did, the youth things, but nothing could really shake that. And eventually, as I got older, then I decided that I was going to take a step, which many people in my community thought was a step of, like I was losing my faith, but actually it was a step of faith. I decided to go out of the church, and I wanted to look for God just in my everyday life, and just try to see, can God be found just in life, without sort of the security and the comfort of this big religion that I had been a part of. So I did that. I came out of it, and I used the analogy. It was like I was coming out of the city into the desert to try to see the stars for themselves. So I did that, and sort of in that time, I remember that I was going along in my life, and things were not so good. I remember distinctly feeling like I was living at about 30% of my life. Like, my marriage was quite difficult, and I was really unhappy in my work. I was kind of drifting with my faith because I'd come out of the church and I didn't have much direction. And I remember sort of thinking back and thinking about how, when I was younger, I would sort of commit my life to God, in that way, as best as I knew at that time, given what I knew. And I just, I remember that I just sort of cried out to God, and I said, I don't want to live at 30%. I don't want to live this life where I feel like I'm stuck and I'm not really going anywhere. And from deep in my heart, I said, I just give my life to you, God. Like, just bring me close to you, and lead me. And that was a very powerful prayer. I think that things started to change from that time. Maybe not necessarily in the way that I would have liked initially. So a few years after that, I started working in the Montessori school where I am now. I was working as a teaching assistant. So I decided that that's really what I wanted to do for work. And I'd taken a big pay cut leaving. I was in the public service for a while, and then I sort of went into this new job. And I had some sort of contracts, you know, I was covering someone's leave, 9 months of maternity leave here and this and that. And then this new principal took over, and people around the school started getting really upset, and the parents and the students were getting upset, and people were leaving the school, and teachers were starting to lose their jobs, and things were getting really shaky, and it was a real worry. And about that time as well, my marriage actually fell apart. So over the course of a year, when all this was happening, my wife and I separated, and then later got divorced. And I just remember that everything in my life seemed to be so stressful at that time. It was like it was sort of just coming apart and breaking apart. But somewhere deep inside me, I remembered some teachings that I'd heard about how, you know, sometimes these things happen. You get broken apart, and that's really laying a new foundation. And I've come back since I've become a Muslim, and I'm reminded of Surah Ar-Ra'd, if I said that correctly, number 13, and I'll just do my best to paraphrase. I don't remember it very well, but it talks about how, I think in a river, it talks about there's the froth, and it's talking about how you've got, or maybe it's like a metal worker, and there's the metal and the ornaments, and then as they're working the metal, this kind of froth comes off, and the froth is like, it's like the falsehood, and the thing that you're making, that creating what's left is the truth. So it's like, another translation says the dross, you know, it gets washed away, it doesn't last, and the good stuff remains, or the gold kind of remains, or the useful part remains. And it says in the Quran that this is an analogy for truth and falsehood, and for how Allah works in our lives. And you know, the things that are broken get pushed away, and the things that are good and useful, they remain and they get stronger. And I feel like that was kind of what was happening in my life. So in that time, I remember that I was so stressed. I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor did some kind of test, and I was way up in the sort of extreme range for stress, and I'd been doing that for months, and getting about 3 hours sleep a night, and you know, there's all this sort of stuff going on. And I remember sometimes that I would actually, to be honest, I just felt like I just wanted to die, and I would kind of lie on my face, and I'd just kind of cry out to God, you know. And actually, without realizing it, I was kind of doing sajda, sujood. So yeah. And you know, I didn't know about Islam at that time, but it was funny that parallel was there. So after a while, things started to sort of clear up, things started to settle down, and I was given a position as an actual teacher. So because, you know, like with the marriage breakup and all that, I had to sort of go and rent a house, and I barely had enough money to sort of get by, and so this was a really big step. But it was also a really crazy step, because the school was still in turmoil, and I was taking over a class, and I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't ready for that. So that was a very, very difficult year. And I remember also there was this poem that my mum really loves, and she sort of gave it to me during that time. And she talks about they talk about Jesus, but I won't. You know, that was a Christian sort of thing, so we can just say put that aside and say this is how it is with God. But like, it's like the poem says that you're walking along the beach, and that was the person's life, and they noticed that in the hardest times there was only one set of footprints, so they were walking along. Sorry, this is a bit of an awkward one for Muslims, because it's imagining Jesus there, but you know, again, going back, I wasn't a Muslim then, so you just have to bear with me. And the idea was that there was two sets of footprints, and they were walking together, and there was only one set of footprints at the hardest times, and they say, you know, like, you abandoned me, God, in this time, and then God sort of talks back and says, no, in that time, I carried you. And so, anyway, so there's probably a few problematic things in that for us in that poem, but the idea about us being really held close by Allah in those times of deepest trouble, that was what really stayed with me, and I think that's what we can take from that. So things started to move on the work front, and it was about that time when I met the woman who's now my wife, and she was the first person who really inspired me to actually look into Islam more deeply. So some of the things were, the way that she loved her parents so much, and she really respected them. And I'd felt for a long time that in the culture that I'd known, that just wasn't there. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing, and that really inspired me. Another thing is the generosity. I was sharing with a brother just before a talk that I heard, an English woman who became a Muslim, and she said she travelled to Palestine, and was a very, very poor woman, and it was Ramadan, and she had her last bowl of rice, and she offered it to this English woman, and this woman was so blown away by that generosity of this very, very poor woman to just give that last bowl of rice away, that she's just like, I just want to be part of this religion now. So that sort of thing. I just want to be part of this religion now. So that sort of thing really inspired me, and so my wife Halima, she introduced me to Imam Adam, and we had some talks, and I was just amazed at the way that I was beginning to see Islam, and seeing it as living according to our true nature. And that was something that was really new to me. I had absolutely no idea, because I'd never heard this side of Islam. I'd only known the stereotypes that most people from the outside know. And so over time, obviously, I learned more, and I took Shahada. And I like to say that, because for me, to actually make that step and become a revert, obviously the Shahada was the big thing. And so in my mind, there was a few steps to that. So the first was, well, what's a Muslim? And then there's Muslim with a lowercase m, so Muslim as in someone who has submitted their life to God. And I thought, well, that's been me for a long time. I've shared how I did that. But then what about a Muslim with a capital M? That is somebody who's in this religion of Islam. And so for me, that was really about Prophet Muhammad, and who is this Prophet Muhammad? And when I learned about this man who would let the kids kind of climb up him when he was when he was in prayer, or he would run races with his wife Aisha, and just the generosity of his heart. I felt this man is definitely a prophet, and that's when I took the step. Yeah. So I guess I'll just finish up. And I want to say that Islam. I guess I want to go back to that time when I was sort of in that difficult time, and I made that prayer, and I just think that that was a really big turning point for me. And Alhamdulillah, Allah, He heard my prayer, and my life took it. I got that new foundation and really changed direction in a way I could never ever have imagined. And here I am today. If someone had told me even 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, that I would be sitting in a masjid talking to all of you, no way I would have believed it. I guess if there's anyone who feels that they are stuck in their life, or that they you're just sort of drifting a little bit, I would encourage you to take that step. It's a dangerous prayer, but really, if you can really give yourself from deeply in your heart to Allah, then your life can open up, and inshallah, you won't have to go through sort of things that I went through. But for many of you here, you're a lot younger than I was when I took that step, and you can get on a good path and start living from your heart now, and you can really live life to the fullest, and you can live closest to your true human nature through this religion. And that's my experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawoud. For those of you who may not know, this is part of our youth program that we organize here. This talk was initially scheduled for the main hall, but because of some other thing, we decided to bring it to the masjid. So for the youth, you have heard what he said. If you've got any questions that you would like to talk to Brother Dawoud, he's very skilled, very knowledgeable about dealing with the youth. This is specifically for you, brothers. You can talk to him. You want to say something?